Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. To all my dear brothers and sisters, to all the mothers and the fathers, and to everyone out there who's looking at this episode. Inshallah, right now we are going to discuss one of the most important debates, personally, with which I have high interest of, about the schooling of a child. So, a lot of people are confused on the public school or contemporary school or an Islamic school or homeschooling. So let's just discuss, let's just compare them, let's just see the pros and the cons of all type of systems. So the first thing which I'm going to discuss right now is about the contemporary school or a secular school or a school which has got nothing to do with the religion itself in comparison to Islamic school. Now we all know that we are living in a society where in Pakistan, majority of us are Muslims. So we don't have that kind of problem up to that level in comparison to a person who is studying in America or whose children are studying in England or whose children are studying in Switzerland or in Holland, right? So because they are living in a non-Muslim society, they have kind of more this kind of problem in comparison to us. So even though we living in Pakistan also face this dilemma, but actually they have more problems than we have. So let's just discuss about Muslim schools or Islamic schools that are generally known in Pakistan. I am teaching in Islamic school myself, and I've also taught in schools which are not Islamic. So the key difference between an Islamic school and a contemporary school is the environment. So one might argue that what is actually an Islamic school? So by the time when my son is going to do O levels or A levels, he must become a scholar. So for someone, this is not an Islamic school. The definition of Islamic school for someone is just having an Islamic environment, and a lot of people who are Muslims are teachers who are basically good practicing Muslims. So the definition might vary for person to person. The key thing is that when you are defining a school for your child, you need to know what do you really mean by Islamic school and what do you want school to do. A problem हमारी society में ये है that parents generally think that they can outsource the tarbiyah part of their child, which is not actually true. So you cannot outsource. Parenting is something that you have to do it because you are the father, you are the mother. It's your responsibility. The school might help achieving your goal, but it's actually not their responsibility. Yes, they are charging a lot of money, but despite charging a lot of money, they can't actually fulfill your dreams. So the biggest benefit of Islamic school is having a good environment. Now, when I see the schools based in my locality, there are some contemporary schools and there are some Islamic schools. I'm not saying that all the Islamic schools are up to that level it should be. There's a lot of need, a lot of room for improvement, and a lot of Islamic schools are working very, very hard to achieve that. But in comparison to a contemporary school, there's a lot of difference in the environment itself. So for instance, an Islamic school is not going to have a music class. And all the schools, whether they are in DHA, whether they are in whichever area they are in, so most of the schools have a proper music class. And most of the schools actually don't have any place to offer salam. And let me tell you an incident that there's a very famous school. और हुआ ये कि the school timing gets over at 2:15. I'm not going to name that school. हुआ ये कि it's like a school for elite people. So there was a lady a child most probably from O levels. Now she wanted to do her Zohar Salah, and there was no place for her to do her Zohar Salah. Some of the teachers suggested that go to the library and offer the Salah over there. Now the principal or the head teacher passed from that area, and she was shocked that, how come you are offering Salah in this? You have become radicalized. Now, this is typical mentality of someone who doesn't really understand Islam. And so, a lot of people, when they get birth into a very secular kind of family, a very elite kind of family, who don't really believe in worshipping, who don't really believe in this whole idea of hijab, and when their daughters kind of take scarf, so they think that, our son or our daughter are becoming radicalized. And this is where Islamic school actually helps. Islamic school actually helps your child in providing an environment which is most of the time Sharia compliant. So Islamic schools actually don't allow music in their campuses. They don't allow free intermingling between opposite genders. And this is something which is very good for an Islamic school. And this is one of the reasons you should send your child to an Islamic school. Now a lot of parents वो अपनी गलती क्या करते हैं कि their child is studying in a secular school and when he becomes very naughty, when he becomes very rude, और जब वो देखते हैं कि बहुत ज़्यादा बुलिंग कर रहे हैं, बच्चों को छेड़ता है, जवाब देते हैं, उसकी लैंग्वेज बहुत ज़्यादा वल्गर हो गई है. Now as a cure to that, वो इस्लामिक स्कूल को समझते हैं कि it's like holding tanks, right? So what they think is कि हम अपने बच्चों को जैसे उठाते हैं and let us go and find an Islamic school, and once he goes to an Islamic school, it's going to fix a problem like this. But this is not how it generally is. If your society, your environment at home is not Islamic school is not going to actually help. So a lot of children of Islamic school themselves abuse. So are teachers telling them to abuse? No, that is not the scenario. But the filth that they bring from their house, whatever they have been programmed at their house, they try to bring that in Islamic school. And this is where the administration of Islamic school might work. There's a lot of room for improvement for Islamic schools as well. So for instance, someone who belongs to a secular family, or maybe someone in their family, they all of them listen to music. So when he's singing the song in an Islamic school, when he's bringing the movies and distributing to other children in Islamic school, everyone gets affected by that. और यही Islamic schools को करना चाहिए that in order to create an Islamic environment, they should do tarbiyah. Now we know कि जितने भी contemporary schools हैं, they don't generally do tarbiyah. So they give education, but they don't do tarbiyah. And one of the scholars advised me that you are in a field of teaching, what you need to do is that talim should be given with tarbiyah. Even just education itself is just information. So if that information is not given with tarbiyah, with a discipline, with a character, then that's useless. And this is something that we need to see. मैं ये नहीं claim कर रहा कि Islamic schools are actually very very good. अगर आप Islamic school और contemporary schools को compare करें, generally ये होता है कि more Islamic schools are generally disorganized. Now, alhamdulillah, we are living in a society where we are seeing a lot of Islamic schools. And alhamdulillah, some of them are working very very hard to be very very organized. But yes, this is a deficiency, that Islamic schools in comparison to a contemporary school is generally not as good in administration as a contemporary school could be. और उसकी reason, there are multiple reasons of it. One of the reason is that Islamic school generally tries to follow the norms of Sharia, and it doesn't really charge you extra with something. So for instance, there are a lot of fines. So if someone is absent on a particular day in different schools, they impose you a fine, which Islamic school generally don't do. Okay, so the administration part is a little weak, but what you need to see is that it's your child. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given this child, he's a flower in your life, and you need to nurture it, because it's better for you to send your child to an Islamic school in comparison to a contemporary school, because whatever lack of deficiency they have in their academia, you can help your child in the evening to fulfill that. So your child can be on par, but he's being given with good Islamic content, with a good Islamic knowledge, which is not getting anywhere else. In comparison to a contemporary school whose teacher might be an atheist, so he might be propagating something that is against Islam, he might be a socialist, so he might be propagating any theory against Islam, which generally dilutes the mind of your child. And when he dilutes the mind of your child, it's actually very very difficult for you to make him unlearn that and then give him an Islamic approach. So this is the comparison between an Islamic school and a secular school. Another key point is that a lot of people actually think that once their child is going to any school, then it's not their responsibility anymore. No, it's basically a partnership between school and you. And you need to be engaged. And I've generally seen that parents who are more engaged into the life of their child, the children cognitive thinking is far more than those parents who are not engaged with their life. And so a lot of time I've seen that parents don't actually get involved in the life of their child, so they don't actually know that what was the homework, what was the class work. And multiple times when a teacher doesn't even check the copy of his child, parents don't actually know, and they don't actually come up to the school and inform that this is something that you have been missing out. So school have flaws, let it be a contemporary school, let it be Islamic school. But in the end, in comparison to a contemporary school, an Islamic school, I would always recommend you to select an Islamic school for your child, because he is going to gain some knowledge of Islam, no matter whatever school it might be. So he might get to know about the stories of the Prophet. Now, I know of a neighbor of mine who actually didn't know who was Musa alayhi salam. And because he never went to an Islamic school, this is a state that people actually don't know who was Musa alayhi salam, who was Ibrahim alayhi salam, who was Yaqub alayhi salam. But a child studying in Islamic school, no matter whatever school it might be, he actually has at least an idea. And even if he doesn't become a scholar, he's not going to become someone who's going to oppose it. Now, the same applies for the university as well. Generally, what happens is that once a child graduates from his school, is done with O levels and A levels, when he goes to university, he is under a lot of influence of different professors who has, for instance, 800 course hours with him, and they kind of give subliminal messages to all the class. So a professor of physics might give a lot of messages on non-existence of God through physics. And because these people have graduated in A levels without any Islamic background, without any good Islamic content, in comparison to the secular content or the contemporary content that is being bombarded on their head, like the secular content is this much in with regards to whatever technicalities and depth it is, in comparison to very little Islamic content that he has studied. So generally that person gets molded and gets influenced by that professor because he actually doesn't know what Islam is. So for instance, without reading any Quran, without reading any of the Ahadith, without knowing the basic tenets and the purpose of those tenets in Islam, when he gets to listen the professor, he is under great influence. A lot of people, when they go to secular universities, when they go to different universities, they tend to become an atheist. And one of the professor who actually know, he said that there was a person, I went to his house and his father said that, you should talk to him. And that child was actually studying in one of the most renowned universities in Lahore. And he said that, he wasn't willing to accept the existence of God. And this is the reason that our society is going far away from the religion itself, because the Islamic content that is being taught in schools of a very low level, right, in comparison to contemporary content which is of very high level. So the Islamic content will be generally for like till grade 5, grade 6, O levels, but the contemporary content is of a graduation level. So when he compares both the contents, he chooses this one because he doesn't really have access to all the knowledge that should have been given by the Islamic schools or by the contemporary schools. One of the most key points which I would want to discuss right now with you as a parents is that you need to understand that when a child graduates from his school, when he's done with A levels and he goes to university, so he's exposed to a lot of different kind of professors now, and some of the professors might be atheist, some of the professors might be socialist, some of the professors might be agnostic. So they say that we are least taught by the religion itself. So what happens now is that because the child lacks in understanding of the basic tenets of Islam, he doesn't actually know what was the purpose of those tenets. He actually doesn't know that where should he get Islamic knowledge from. He has never read Quran. He has never read any Hadith. He is actually going and sitting and attending the course of an 800-hour time. And the professor is kind of in between teaching. He kind of throws subliminal messages which is ultimately going to affect the child. So maybe if he is an agnostic or he belongs to the department of physics, he is going to make them understand that there is no existence of God. He is going to make them understand that all the ahadith, maybe they are outdated, nauzubillah, or maybe they are not relevant for today's world, or he is going to somehow give his own interpretation, understanding of deen. And this young boy is very young at mind. He somehow gets influenced. The reason for that influence is not because the professor was right, but one of the major reason is that he doesn't actually know what Islam is. And this is something which we need to focus on. आपको अपने बच्चों को make sure that before they do A levels, they have understood and read Quran by whatever language they understand best, and they actually know that which source is the right source for us to get Islamic knowledge. अगर उन्हें नहीं ये पता होगा, then ultimately wherever they are going to go, they are going to be influenced by that particular person or company. एक बहुत बड़ा मैंने प्रॉब्लम ये देखा that a lot of people go abroad after doing A levels. One of the scholar actually say that आप बच्चों को बाहर भेजें और ये तवक्को करें कि वो सहाबी बनकर आएंगे, नामुमकिन। अब एक बच्चा है जिसने ओ लेवल्स किया है, ए लेवल्स किया है और उसको इस्लाम की अंडरस्टैंडिंग नहीं है या उसको इस्लाम पे नॉलेज नहीं है या वो रिलीजियसली इतना ज़्यादा इन्वॉल्व नहीं है, ही डजंट हैव दैट लेवल ऑफ हाई फेथ, जब वो उस कंपनी में जाते हैं, व्हेन ही इज़ गोइंग टू यूएसए और यूके, ही इज़ अल्टीमेटली गोइंग टू अडॉप्ट देयर वे ऑफ लाइफ, is ultimately going to think this as a freedom because this is something that he wanted to do. One of my friend who went abroad and he started hanging out with those people who were very very deviated, so you might even not call them Muslims, and once he went and he started hanging out, he also became very very deviated. So one of the key reason is that if you want your child to go abroad, make sure that he is well equipped Islamically, he is well equipped intellectually, and it's the right age for him to go. So generally I recommend you to send your child after graduation, let them do graduation over here, because over here once you want to do sin, you have to go near to that sin, but when you go abroad, the sin bumps into you, and all those people living in West already, they have a high immune system rather than these people who go from another country, from Islamic country, with a very low immune system. So this was all about Islamic schools and contemporary schools. Inshallah, now we are going to compare two school systems. One is homeschooling, another one is a regular schooling. So a lot of propagators of homeschooling actually say that this homeschooling is better than any form of other schooling. One of the pros of homeschooling is that you have educational freedom. And by that educational freedom, I actually mean that you can make them study whatever you want them to study. So you don't have to follow a particular type of curriculum. You don't have to follow a particular type of time. One of the biggest benefits of this homeschooling is you get educational freedom. Another benefit of homeschooling is that you get physical freedom. So now you don't have to send your child to school anymore. So you might be traveling to different countries, or your lifestyle might be that you living abroad for some months and you coming back home for some months, or you traveling to different parts of your country, and you can take your family, your children along with you. So now you have physical freedom which you can offer to your child. Now a lot of people actually say that once you are homeschooling your children, you have emotional freedom as well. So the child, most of the childs, when they go to school, they get to hear different comments, they get to hear different critiques, and a lot of people get to meet a lot of bullies in the school as well. And generally it's being told that bullies are in male gender school, but that's not actually true. A lot of people actually say, a lot of psychologists actually say that in an all girls school there are a lot of bullies as well. And when a child gets to see a lot of bullies, he is actually mentally traumatized and he's not in a state that he wants to go, and actually it breaks his self-esteem. So the biggest propagators, or one of the biggest reason propagators of homeschooling say that is, we want our child to be emotionally free. And you also have religious freedom. So for instance, if you are living in a locality where there are no Islamic schools and you are homeschooling your child, तो क्या होता है कि there is a religious freedom. आप अपने बच्चों को you can tell them whatever you want to tell them about Islam, and he's not exposed to that kind of evil environment where he'll be learning something very very bad. Another biggest advantage of homeschooling is that the relationship between you and your child grows and it becomes very very healthy. अगर आप normal school hours देखें, so a child gets to spend more time in school rather than the time he spends with you. So for instance, you are coming from office at 7 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and by that time he is playing in ground, and then you and he are sleeping. So the time is very limited that you actually spend actively with one another in comparison to school, because he is spending 7 to 8 hours in school with different teachers. So this actually helps you to bring a very strong relationship with that. One of the benefit of homeschooling is that if your life is going through a tragedy, you can actually use that time in making bonds with one another, and then you can ask him to study on whatever time you want to do. And the children are generally well rested. So homeschoolers are generally well rested. They don't have to go to school every day. They don't have the kind of energy that requires for them to go to school every day. They are generally well rested, and their homework and classwork is almost the same, so they don't have to do the work again and again. And these were some of the benefits of homeschooling, which I totally agree with. But if you compare homeschooling in comparison to the normal schooling, there are some pros as well, there are some cons as well. If you compare the homeschooling with the normal schooling, तो इसके अपने benefits हैं और उसके अपने benefits हैं. One of the biggest disadvantage of this is that you cannot homeschool your child if you don't have discipline timings at home. So for instance, if he gets up at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock, it's ultimately going to destroy his routine. So if he is homeschooling, you need to ensure कि वो time पर ही उठे and he kind of follows a regular timetable and a schedule, because we all know कि effectively operate करने के लिए we need to have timetable in place. और जब वो टाइम टेबल टूट जाता है, then what happens is the entire energy level, the output of that particular person goes away. एक और सबसे बड़ा डिसएडवांटेज ये है कि अगर आपका बच्चा होम स्कूल करे, so you are stick with him 24/7. Your personality as your mother or father actually turns into a teacher. So if you're not having a very good bonding with the child, he is literally with you 24/7, and he wants someone else in life as well. So it's not like he doesn't maybe want to spend a lot of time with you. It's not like he hates you, but he also has a need to meet different people, to experience different things in life. One of the biggest advantages of homeschooling is that I agree that, in a school, the pace covers the majority of the people, the average people. So if your child is very slow or if your child is very bright, then he is wasting his time, because if he's very, very slow, teachers are generally not paying a lot of attention to him because they can't do. So a teacher cannot cater all the people. A teacher has to see, he has to go with the same pace as for the majority of the class. And if your child is academically very, very brilliant, a lot of people, a lot of teachers do not put extra pressure on them. So the teachers generally cater the majority of the class and their pacing. But once you're homeschooling, you can adjust the pace according to whatever capability and the level he has. So this is one of the biggest advantage. But in comparison to this advantage, one of the biggest disadvantage of homeschooling is, which I feel as a teacher, it's very, very important, that once you are teaching something to your child, and if he doesn't have any question, or if the question doesn't come in his mind, he's not going to get an answer for that in comparison to a collective learning state. So for instance, if I'm teaching a concept of trigonometry to the class and there's some person who asks me a question, so I'm going to ask the same question to everyone, and one of the child might be pushed to think about something about it. In comparison to homeschooling, where a child is not actually pushed to think of different scenarios. So in school, a child learns from the mistakes of others, but in homeschooling, he doesn't really have the means to learn from the mistakes of others. One of the biggest disadvantages why I don't really prefer homeschooling, you might disagree with me, is that he is not exposed to different kind of activities and competitions which he is exposed to in a normal school. At homeschooling, you cannot have a debate competition, you cannot have a swimming competition, you cannot have a sports day, you cannot have dramatics, you cannot have a speech competition. All these competitions are not available to those people who are doing homeschooling. In comparison to normal schooling, where a child is exposed to different kind of competitions. And you know that academics is not the end, rather than these extracurricular activities actually help them to learn in life. It actually helps for their learning as well. And this is a comparison between homeschooling and normal schooling, but it depends on your circumstances in the end. The end objective is the maximum output and the benefit you can get from your child. This is the end. What I personally recommend all of you, and what I personally think it should be a partnership between you and your school. Now imagine how, no matter how good the school is, how good the teachers are, they are going to play some role in your life, but in the end it's your child. You have to take the pain, you have to take the burden. If you're not willing to take the burden, if you're not willing to invest the child in your life, then ultimately you're not going to get the result which you dream for. So you are not going to get that particular objective which you want your child to achieve if you are not paying attention. This is a comparison. So my recommendation, my final solution is, let him go to a normal school. But despite him going to normal school, you need to engage him in different kind of activities. So make sure that he's studying something in school, but make sure he's studying something extra with you at home as well. So make sure if the school doesn't have any horse riding facility, make sure that he goes to a horse riding club in the evening. What I would recommend you to do is that you need to make a vision document for your child. So for instance, you need to make sure that by the 10-year time, when my child reaches the age of 10, I want him to be maybe a Hafizul Quran. Maybe I want him to have full understanding of Quran. Maybe I want him to be a good swimmer. Maybe I want him to be a good horse rider. Maybe I want him to be a good mathematician. And you need to make a document with every year which he is going to achieve. So you need to write it down that in 2018 he is going to learn these many things. In 2019 he is going to learn so and so things. In 2020 he is going to learn so and so things. And make sure that you stick to the plan. Make sure that you have communicated very effectively with the child. You also need to see the child's interest. So if the child wants to become an engineer, let him become one. If a child wants to become a doctor, let him become one. Do not impose your ideology or your dream onto your children without their consent. I understand that they are not in that particular age where they can take the decision of their life, but do not impose it on them. Let them make their choices and let them learn from their mistakes. So this was a comparison between an Islamic school, a home school, and a contemporary school. And it's up to you, it's up to your circumstances, whatever suits you best, whatever is within your capability, whatever you feel is right for your child. Make sure that you choose that option. But in the end, it's your child and you have to invest on him. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.